The law of action. Why insight means nothing without actual movement. So, welcome back to my little series of the law ofs. Today, we're going to be talking about the law of action. And of course, this one feels especially relevant for a lot of us because we're at the start of the new year. And if there's something that I've noticed over and over again in myself and in others, is that we're not short on ideas and we're not short on inspiration and we're not even short on motivation. But what we do struggle with is movement or putting those things into action. So we read the books, we listen to the podcasts, we journal, and we do our manifestations and we reflect. But sometimes we find that we're still in the same place. A year can pass, 2 years can pass, and not much has changed. So today I want to talk about why action is actually the bridge between insight and change, and why so much actually starts inside us, not outside in the physical world. So quickly, I just want to touch on how this actually fits with the other laws that I've actually spoken about over the last few weeks. And we've touched on the law of attraction. So focus shapes what you actually notice. The law of rhythm, the energy and how that moves in cycles, and the law of vibration, your nervous system state and how that actually shapes your experience. But none of those actually create change on their actual own. Focus without action is just thinking, energy without action is just potential, and regulation without action is just comfort. Now, all of these laws are really great that I've spoken about before, but I think the law of action is what turns all of those previous things into something more real for us. So it's a great one to end the series on. So inner work doesn't replace action, not by any stretch of the imagination. It just prepares you for it. And I think that's really important to remember. So I'm just going to repeat that. So inner work doesn't replace action, it just prepares us for it. So let's talk about why we stay stuck, like where we are, like we just stay in the same place. There's a lot of reasons I could unpack here because it's comfortable and easy and things like that. But I think even when we know better, sometimes we don't choose better. And this is where it gets interesting, if I'm being honest. So most inaction isn't laziness, it's protection. It's protecting ourselves. So psychology tells us that when we avoid actual action, it's often because of a fear of failure. I'm the first one for that. Fear of judgment, that's another big one. Fear of success on the other spectrum. And fear of getting it wrong or fear of being seen like an idiot. Fear of disrupting what's familiar. Now, that one's probably not talked about enough. And I think this is what leads us into talks about, jobs, going to work, and things like that. That structure of normality that society has, and we all have been in and are in, because that's what we're brought up with, and that's what we are sort of programmed to respect as the norm. But I think the law of action directly opposes that, in that sometimes when you're seen taking action, and that be maybe that you're starting your own business or you want to do something that you love or you've got a passion project or something like that, a lot of the time these things are kind of labeled as that and people don't put any credence into it, and then it fails and we're kind of punished for the law of action. And those things then, of course, consequently feed into all those things that we've just previously talked about and all the fear ofs. So our brain prefers certainty over growth, without a doubt. That's the reptilian side of our brain kicking into life, even if that certainty is uncomfortable, right? Keeps us stuck in the same place. Or that may just keep us, like broke or in a job that we hate or in a relationship that's not very good or just in an unhappy state. So our brain is really keeping us in that place of uncomfortableness or sometimes comfortableness because it knows it. It doesn't know anything else. So the sciencey bit, right, is the brain is wired to minimize threat for us. So a novel action equals uncertainty. And uncertainty triggers a stress response. So if we've done something in the past that has been stressful, that will be linking us to something probably, most likely, that is seen as unsafe as our brain goes. So therefore, it's not going to be in a rush to relive it, which is fair enough. It's our brain and our bodies protecting ourselves. But sometimes for action to happen, we've actually got to step past the fear. We've got to step past that stress response, and it's really tough. And this is why we actually end up looping and reliving Groundhog Day over and over and over again. And this is why a lot of reflection comes in at this time of the year, because we look back on what we have done or what we haven't done, and we fool ourselves into thinking that we're going to go into the new year all guns a blazing, and we're going to lose the weight. That's why gym memberships just skyrocket at this time of the year, because unfortunately a lot of people monopolize on this and they'll sell programs, and then it's all piss and wind, and it all falls in on itself, and 2 weeks later we don't get the results that we want because we haven't taken that action consistently, just as an example. So in this loop, we think, reflect, plan, rethink, delay. And it's not because we don't care, it's because our nervous system doesn't yet feel safe. Okay? So let's look at the neuroscience of actual action. This is where the science actually gives us a powerful reframe. Action actually creates clarity, not the other way around. And research in behavioural neuroscience actually shows movement reduces rumination. So that's reliving the same thing over and over and over again. I'm an expert ruminator. Small actions lower fear responses. Action builds evidence for the brain. And dopamine is released through progress, not perfection. Let me read that out again. Dopamine is released through progress, not perfection. And this is where it comes unstuck, because as human beings, we are seeking perfection everywhere we go. Social media is a brilliant platform for this, right? This is why natural videos, talking head videos, people doing stupid things naturally are so addictive, because they're real. And perfection, while it used to be rewarded, is not so much anymore. So that plays into that. Dopamine is released through progress, not perfection. So in simple terms, your brain learns by doing, not thinking. This is why waiting to feel ready really works. And this is the thing that I see come up a lot with business owners. So myself as a traditional business owner, and also as a business owner in the online space. So I work in high ticket affiliate marketing. One of the biggest questions and one of the biggest pushbacks I get is that I don't think I'm ready for that at the moment. Maybe we could relook at it in 6 months' time, a year's time, a couple of years' time, when the kids are growing up, or I've got more money in the bank, or I've got more free time. We never feel ready, people. It's as simple as that. So there has to be a little bit of a deliberate switch or action when it comes to moving forward and putting into play the law of action that we're talking about today. Let's look at a little bit of an analogy about this. You don't steer a parked car, right? Movement creates the direction. So if you're sitting in a parked car and steering, you're not going anywhere. You're literally, for want of a better term, spinning your wheels. You're not, but you can turn the steering wheel in a car and the wheels turn, but nothing happens, because there's no movement, there's no action, and that action creates your direction. So let's talk about how this actually shows up in real life and in business, because it's always good to give you some examples here. So in business, waiting for clarity before posting, it's like building a website and thinking people will come, right? It's that sense of you're waiting for something to appear before you've actually taken the action, and waiting for confidence before starting, waiting for certainty before changing. But all these things, clarity comes after action, and people are stuck in this loop cycle. So hopefully you're starting to see it come through without me sounding like I'm repeating myself 20 billion times. But clarity comes after action. So how clarity turns up is a completely different conversation, because clarity will come in many guises after action. It may be painful. It may be it may bring up something that is you've been hiding because you've actually taken the action to move through that. So it's a form of growth. And my next point is obviously in personal growth. Insight without application changes nothing. Zero things change without application. And this is why it's so important in business and in life, whether we have a counsellor, whether we see a specialist, whether we have a coach in business. Those people are sort of the bridge a little bit, that they take you into a place of action. So awareness without movement keeps us in that loop cycle, and reflection without action becomes avoidance. So let's say this slowly. Self-development without action becomes a comfortable form of procrastination. I love that. Self-development without action becomes a comfortable form of procrastination. Sophisticated way of saying you're going to be in the same place that you were this time last year. So let's talk about what action actually means. So this is important because action doesn't mean burning everything down, all guns blazing, and making massive leaps. Absolutely not. Action can be one email, right? One conversation, one post that you make, one boundary that you feel yourself moving through, one decision that you make, one honest step that you actually take. Action is movement and alignment. It's not perfection. And often the bravest action is the smallest one you've actually been avoiding. Now, I'll tell you a little story that I'll share. I work in the online space, in the high ticket space, but I also work as a small business owner. So I've got lots of streams of income. And one of the things that's been winding down for me is my actual sort of traditional business as a bookkeeper and a virtual assistant, because I've been building my business online. Now, I had a client come to me that's been a bit, I'll say it, wishy-washy. They've been all over the place. They say they wanted to get my services, and I was, excited about this and the rest of it. But in all honesty, I wasn't pursuing it, or I was avoiding it, because I'm looking at really focusing on building my online business, because that income that is going to continue way past when I can only cram so many hours into the day, right? Okay, so that's sort of my passive income. And I sat on this client for quite a while, like a couple of weeks, because they had been so vague and actually asking what they wanted from me. They just said that they wanted to work with me, and they weren't sure how they could do that because they'd inherited a business that I'd actually worked in previously. And I sort of put that onus back onto them. And then weeks went past, and I thought, why am I avoiding this? I'm avoiding actually taking action because of their inaction. So I was getting stuck into this loop, and then the ruminating crept into my head. So I thought, no, I'm just going to take action. So I outlined an email basically saying, this is the hours that I'll be available for you each week. With that, you actually get my knowledge of the business, and we'll set it up as a retainer. And it was a set amount of hours per week at a set amount. And I just thought, what have I got to lose? It was one email that I actioned. I sent it off, and that's all they needed. They just needed that action from me to go, yep, this is perfect. This is exactly what we're looking for. So they, on the other side of the coin, the mirror of me, were so stuck in action that what I offered them was the perfect solution. And all it took was action from me. So this is what I'm talking about. Sometimes it's simple as just not overcomplicating it and actually sending that email. It literally took 5 minutes of my time. And now I have a client locked in as a retainer for the next 3 months with a review after that. And problem has been solved. So I took the action. And this is what I'm talking about. The clarity that could have come from that may have been, oh no, we don't want to do that for the meantime. And then I would have got an answer. May not have been the one I wanted, but at least I would have got an answer, and that clarity has been resolved. But in this instance, I got a clarity for me, which was a positive, because I got a little bit of extra income for this 3 month period. And I still get to build my business in the online space as well. So I love giving you guys some tools, some practical applications that you can kind of put into place. So ask yourself the question, right? Ask yourself the right question and say, instead of what's the perfect next step, ask what's the smallest step that creates movement. And that example that I just spoke about is a perfect example of that, right? And number two, regulate then act. Use the law of vibration here. And if you haven't watched that episode, I'll link it for you. Calm your nervous system first, then move, then make that movement. So regulation plus action equals a more sustainable progress. Sometimes if we go sit in the regulation, nothing happens because we're very much in a kind of zen space, my terminology. And then if we're in action and we're all go, 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 rah, 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 sometimes the wheels fall off. So if we put those two together, we've got regulation and action, we get a more sustainable progress. And number three, treat action as information, right? Every action gives feedback. So nothing is wasted. Absolutely nothing. And no action equals no data, right? If you've ever worked in the analyst space or anything like that, no action equals no data. So if there's no data, then no action has been taken. And we're staying in that same place. So, to close out for you guys today, the law of action reminds us that insight alone doesn't change lives. Movement actually does. Not perfect movement, not fearless movement, just honest, aligned steps forward. And as we sort of tackle the new year, you don't need a new version of yourself. You don't need to go in all guns a blazing. You need one small action that tells your brain, I'm actually moving now. And that's actually where everything begins. So that's it. That's today's episode. And the last one for my Law of series as we sort of move into the second half of January. I will link all of them below for you in the description. And yeah, I hope you go back and listen to them. They've been really great. I've loved doing them. And until next time, have a fantastic day.